Kira Sorrells, and this is NICUnity. NICUnity is NICU Parent Network's all-encompassing educational initiative to foster a culture of belonging for all members of our community. This initiative is made possible by the generous support of Chiesi USA. Chiesi is a privately owned, research-focused pharmaceutical company committed to infant care for over 3 decades. As a sustainable company accredited with both a B Corp and a benefit corporation status, Chiesi strives to make an impact through forward-looking and impactful initiatives that benefit patients, patient families, providers, and healthcare organizations. Chiesi recognizes and appreciates the vital role that families play in the care of NICU babies and is proud to support this community. Our monthly schedule of NICUnity offerings include discussions, leadership lounges, and special health topic webinars that bring together NICU parent leaders, adult former NICU patients, healthcare partners, and other maternal infant health stakeholders for candid discussions about diverse experiences in the NICU and beyond. We want to shine a light on those who are often marginalized, silenced, and underestimated, and we are thrilled to provide this platform for these conversations. So we thank you for joining us as we embark on this journey of learning, growth, and unity. Together, we will build a stronger, more inclusive NICU community, one conversation at a time. For today's NICUnity health discussion, we are recognizing NICU Awareness Month, and I am delighted to be joined by Dr. Chavis Patterson and Aubrey Kresh. Parents of babies in the NICU often experience shock, fear, and confusion. They are faced with overwhelming emotions like guilt and anxiety. And we just, it's unlike any experience you could have in life, and you can never really be prepared for it. You're thrown into a foreign world full of medical terminology and equipment. And this traumatic experience can have long-lasting effects. Support during this time really is essential. And when your baby is born full term or near term with medical complications, it's often thought that the experience is less traumatic. Well, our guest today will discuss why this simply is not the case. So I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Chavis Patterson and Aubrey Kresh. Dr. Patterson oversees expert psychosocial care for families in the NICU, addressing stressors impacting children. He collaborates with interdisciplinary teams as an administrative leader, educator, and researcher, and is the current board president of the National Perinatal Association, advocating for enhanced support and care for families during critical health challenges. Aubrey has been an active ambassador for 3 years with Project NICU and a current volunteer. She loves spending time with her husband, Tom, and their 2 boys, Hudson and Carson. The boys were born at 36 and 37 weeks, and the youngest was sent to the NICU after birth. The NICU was definitely not in their birth plan, but Aubrey says she is thankful they had the NICU there to take care of her little man, and for Project NICU that provided much needed support and awareness. So thank you so much, Dr. Patterson and Aubrey, for being here.
Thank you.
You know, usually when we see awareness campaigns about the NICU, we see preterm babies. They seem to get the spotlight. And I think that there is still this kind of misunderstanding that parents of full-term NICU babies, first of all, that they'll probably have a shorter stay, not always the case, or that having a bigger baby means that the experience is less traumatic or impactful. So Aubrey, let's just open up the discussion and let's hear a little bit about your personal experience. Please just share with us what happened and how that affected you.
Sure. So my son Carson was born at 1 day shy of 37 weeks. And the whole pregnancy experience was a little rough the second time around with having an early bird. My first pregnancy, I was already kind of going into this pregnancy a little nervous. Both of my pregnancies, I had contractions starting at 20 weeks. And so I was that person that was a frequent flyer in triage, making sure that, everything's still good and everything. But the night of November 17th of 2018. I had just gotten done having a wonderful Thanksgiving meal. I was full of energy and I had a nice like family time and everything. And the contractions started again, so I just tried to rest. And then they got progressively worse, and that's when my water broke. So we went in and confirmed that I was going into labor. And that was at 12:30. I checked in, and then my son was born at 6:57 a.m. So a relatively quick labor. And because of this, the fast transition I had in those last stages, he was born not breathing. I did not hear that first cry. I was not able to see him. They could not resuscitate him in the room. They had the NICU team was right there, and they took him right away. And oh, I'm getting the shakes right now. And so that is not something that you expect. He was 7 pounds, nearly full term. And nobody provided me with information. And no one was able to tell us what was going on with our child. We didn't know he wasn't breathing. We didn't know what the status of it was. They just took our baby and left the room. And the nurses that stayed back just informed us that they're taking care of your baby, and we'll let you know as soon as possible what is happening. So once we were able to get some information, which unfortunately for us was not until 2.5 hours later, of what the status of our baby was that the transition was too quick and he was not able to adjust to the world right away. And so they had to resuscitate him in the NICU for him to be able to breathe. So those 2.5 hours was a lot for my husband and I to take in, not knowing what happened. I know for me personally, it was very hard, first of all, to not know what happened. Second of all, to not see your child at all, not hear that first cry, not get that golden hour, that skin to skin contact. My husband seeing me go through labor, which for husbands is hard as it is, seeing your wife in that much pain and then not knowing. He actually felt sick and had to sit down and had to get care from a nurse to make sure that he was okay, because it was a very traumatic sight for him, because he actually got to see him in his state, but wasn't able to tell what exactly was happening with Carson. Yeah.
Oh, Aubrey, I just want to say I'm so sorry that was what your experience was. And I just want to thank you also for, for the courage that you have to be here. It takes a lot of courage and bravery to be able to share these very personal experiences. And I just wanted to hold space for that for just a moment and just say thank you. So you were, sorry about that. So you weren't able to see him. You didn't know what was happening for 2.5 hours, and then you were able to go see him and tell me about that, seeing him for the first time.
Sure. So I was actually not able to see him until a couple hours after that, until they knew that he was stabilized. He was on the CPAP machine. They had the NG tube in him. They had the IV in him as well too. So they just wanted to make sure that he was completely stable before we came in to see him. So it was actually about another 2 hours before we were able to go in. And walking into the NICU, it's an experience nobody wants to have.
Right.
Because as much as you feel you know that there's NICUs and that there's other kids in there, you're just concentrated on what yours is and what where your child is and where you need to go in it, but then you're just surrounded by other babies and kids that are in the NICU as well too. It's a very overwhelming feeling. I think the first thing that the first time that I saw Carson, I couldn't really see him. He had the CPAP machine on, he had the IVs, he had the tube, he had his little stocking cap on, and it, but you don't see your child. You see the equipment on your child. And that was a very hard first image. But then once that emotion passes you, just to be able to see them is something that just kind of relaxes you a little bit too. As much as your heart is breaking that they're in this situation, just knowing that you can see your child now made that feel a little bit better. The second thing that I think is the sounds and the smells as well too. I think that sticks with you. It's not quiet. The NICU is not quiet. It's not like a little nursery, like where it's just a soothing lullaby. There's machines there to help our babies stay awake, and those have to make noises. And so the sounds is something that's right there behind your eyesight as well too, just the hearing as well. But yeah, you expect your first image of your kid to be in your arms, and it's not, and that's very hard to unwrap your head around, and kind of feel jealous and guilty at the same time that you didn't get to have that experience.
Right. Chavis, we know from decades now of research that having a critically ill newborn in the NICU can be a trauma event in a family's life. It's evident by, listening to Aubrey talk, and, this was 5 years ago, and obviously, that experience is still very much with her. So why is it that the gestational age of the baby or the length of the hospital stay just does not correlate to the intensity of the experience?
Yeah, as you said, there's and Aubrey, thank you so much for sharing your experience. Quite unimaginable about, again, seeing your baby after 2 hours and then seeing all the tubes and wires. And certainly you expressed many of the emotions that parents go through. And I would say, in response to your question, again, I think everyone's experience is their own. Every journey is different. You can, in the chart, you can look at the date, the time, the birth diagnosis, and match them up, but you don't know, the parent's experience, of that. It's their perspective. It's what their expectations were. It's a lot of things, a lot of intangibles that you don't know about going into the situation, about how you will respond. Again, I think just birth in general is super hard, right? And no matter what the best birth plan that you have, something might happen, to really complicate it, and really create an experience that's totally unexpected. You had mentioned there's an article that someone wrote. I can't remember the woman's name. It's called "Trip to Holland." I don't know, but it basically outlined, a story about you expect to go to Italy, but then when you step off the plane, you're in Holland. And, many people relate that to the NICU experience, where the books and the movies talk about this, wonderful, glamorous experience. Facebook has it as just an amazing thing. And then, you walk in, again, be it in, the birthing room or the NICU, and you see the tubes and the wires and the machinery, and it's just overwhelming. And it's an experience that, again, you don't forget.
Right.
It's truly impactful, and again, in many cases, very traumatic.
Aubrey, just what I see you nodding your head a lot.
Yeah. So the different pathways, that article is a very good, analogy of what it is. Yeah. It's for me as well too. like you said, with the movies and everything, like it's a lot of times birth is glamorized, or it's seen as
Mhm.
like, this is the way that it's done and this is the way that it needs to go and this is
Right,
the way that it's always happened. But
Correct.
that is not the case, and everyone's experience is different. Um, but I want to make sure that people know that that is not the case. Like, there are people
mhm,
like in my situation and others that are in my situation that we didn't have that Hollywood, type
right,
of birth, and that it's okay to feel what you're feeling and to have those experiences that you had, because that's what makes you, are today. And but
mm,
it's hard to accept that too. Like,
yeah,
some days I'm great, and then other
right,
days, like, his birthday is going to be coming up here, and it's hard to like think that that was our experience, and
right,
not think about that it could have been different,
right.
And
Mhm.
I,
And
yeah,
I'm one go ahead, Chavis.
and I was going to say, again, historically there has not been much information about sort of the NICU experience, but again, thanks to NICU Parent Network and other organizations, there's more information about the NICU experience to really sort of demystify some of that and remove some of the anxieties and really set up some expectations to reduce that anxiety. So again, I think it's really
Right.
helpful for venues like this to really demystify some of that and say, yeah, it's kind of
Mhm.
scary, but there are resources, there are people, there are ways to get through it. You don't have to do it alone.
Mhm.
Right, absolutely. I mean, Aubrey, listening to you and your experience, many of the emotions and things that you're saying, I've heard from several NICU families, no matter the gestational age. And I wonder, did you experience any comments or anything about, oh, he's a big baby, he'll be fine, or anything like that?
Yes,
Don't
yes.
worry, he'll be out of here soon.
Yes, yes, I did. And I know that comes from the heart. They want
Right.
to make sure that you are trying to give yourself a positive mindset and really trying to think about what the future is and not in the now. But I think as a parent and as a mom who just gave birth to that, it's very hard to be in that mindset. You can have hope, but
Mhm.
like, between the hormones and just the experience in general, that is,
Right.
the wires are not going to flow. They're going to be crossed in those moments. And yeah,
Mhm.
he was a 7-pound baby, so I heard a lot of people like, oh, he's a big boy. Had he stayed like full term, like, he would have,
Right.
he would have been a 10-pounder or something like that. And and it makes you feel lighter in that moment, but then the
Yeah.
reality of it sits in. Well, that didn't happen. Everything,
Mhm.
he was not in stress throughout my entire labor. Like, there was nothing
Mhm.
that was deemed concerning in the prior ultrasound, checking him and everything. It, like, I had no prepare, like, I wasn't
No
prepared for
preparation.
what was
Yeah.
going to happen. I didn't even have an
Right.
insight that that was going to happen, to kind of
Yeah.
mentally prepare myself for that moment.
Mhm.
It just, yeah, just
Yeah.
happens.
I've talked to a couple other parents who had full-term NICU babies, and they said that they almost felt guilty
Mm.
for feeling bad because they would see other babies that were much smaller. Even if their
Hmm.
baby, was quite sick,
Hmm.
they felt this sense of guilt. Did you experience that?
I did, but then I think that was an initial experience, or even telling my
Mhm.
story. We didn't have a very long NICU stay, and I feel guilty about that at times. Um, but I still had a NICU stay. I still had that
Right.
experience. I still had that. And it kind of like in life, you see, people on social media, like, I get to do this or I get to go there. It's like, how can that happen? But then you find yourself in the comparison game, and that is just not the case. I have to remind myself that I am allowed to accept what happened to me, and I'm
Mhm.
allowed to feel the way that I feel about our experience, Because it is our experience, it happens. And just
Mhm.
because ours is different than the next person doesn't make it any less of a story. Um,
Right.
and so everyone has their own story, and it just so happened that this was ours.
Right. Yeah, and even if the baby is gonna be in the NICU for only a short time, it almost makes it seem as though time really is of the essence in getting those families supported quickly,
Hmm.
helping them learn how to bond with their babies, making sure they have support mechanisms after discharge.
Hmm.
So, Chavis, what else needs to be considered, and what are some of those ways that this can be done successfully?
Yeah, I just want to go back a bit to Audrey's point.
Yeah.
Again, again, your family's experience again is very different from other families, but even within a family, right? The
Mm,
birth parents' experience of the pregnancy, the birth, right after birth is that person's experience, but then the support person, again, what your
mm,
husband saw
Hmm.
and experienced was his experience too. And again, there are
mhm,
probably some overlaps, but I'm sure there are some times when he was very scared because if you weren't able to see Carson and he was, and he didn't see a response maybe that he was hoping for, again, that's also
mhm.
traumatic. So again, even
Right.
within sort of the couples, there are
Mhm.
experiences that are different. I
Yeah.
think in terms of helping with information, again, Aubrey, you pointed all the important pieces. Communication, right, from the
Mhm.
team to the family,
Yeah.
about sort of what's going on, almost narrating in some ways what's going on, what they're doing, because a lot of times you don't necessarily see, you just hear sounds or you don't hear
Mhm.
sounds, and it worries you. So again, just narrating what's going on, what they're doing, what's going on with the baby. I think that's really helpful. Offering some anticipatory guidance, right? This is what's going on
Mhm.
now. This is what's going to happen down the road. Again, I think that's
Mhm.
also very helpful. But again, offering that communication, not necessarily waiting for the parents to ask the questions, because sometimes parents don't
Right.
know what to ask, or they're just so
Exactly.
sort of in shock or stunned,
Mhm.
Yes.
by
Hmm.
being in the NICU or giving birth, that they don't know what to ask. So again, I
Right.
always encourage providers to really talk through the different experiences, so the
Mhm.
parents have an understanding.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. It's that communication piece really cannot be overstated. It's what I mean, like you said, Aubrey, you waited 2.5 hours before you even knew anything,
Hmm.
and I can
Mhm.
only imagine what was racing through your mind
Yeah.
in those hours. And just one little nugget of information, like Chavis said, of this is what happened, this is what's happening next, and some that anticipatory guidance I think is such a key component. um, so Audrey, or excuse me, Aubrey, I'm
It's
so
okay.
sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. It's fine.
Oh, um, in your NICU stay, did you have support? I know you mentioned Project NICU, but I'm wondering if that happened during the NICU stay or after, where you got some of that peer support.
Sure. So I actually had a friend who was had an NICU experience previously, and so
Hmm.
I reached out to her. So I had that connection, um, but she lived far away. So it was
Mm-hmm.
basically just through text, phone calls when we could, while we were
Hmm.
in the NICU. But no, like actual support because our neither of our families have been through a NICU stay like that or experience like
Hmm.
that. So I know it was hard for them to be able to connect or provide the right words
Right.
or support during that moment. But you do kind of like Dr. Patterson said, you're you're either in shock and you don't know what's happening, you're just letting them do their thing, or it's you're just in the mind race of like what's going to happen now kind of thing.
Right.
And we ended up taking a different route after like we were able to catch our breath a little bit later that night. We were the ones that just constantly asked questions like, what are
Hmm.
you doing? What is this? What is that? We were those parents. And as looking back on it now, as overloading as that might have been for the doctors and nurses at the time, I'm so glad that we did do that because that was our way of reassuring ourselves that we were doing the best for our baby at that time. We were being our baby's advocate. So like making sure that we were asking the right questions and providing the doctors and nurses with stuff that we've noticed happening. And so that was our approach there too.
That was how common or uncommon is that, Chavis, for families to kind of jump into answering questions or asking questions? I know me personally, it took me a long time because I felt like I don't know what's going on, and I felt like I didn't know anything about what was going on. And like you said earlier, I didn't know the questions to ask.
Common, I guess, is relative. I don't know. It's hard to
Yeah.
answer how common that is. Again,
Yeah.
I think that during the experience, it's a traumatic experience. There's a lot of emotion happening. There's a lot of anxiety. So again, some folks, the way they work through it is to ask questions. Other
Right.
folks, it's just kind of to sit back and just sort of still be in shock. So again, I think it's more individual.
Okay.
I would say though, again, on the healthcare provider side, I always again remind providers that many times this is the first experience this parent is having, so expect questions, expect anxiety, right? Expect emotion.
Right.
Again, whether full-term birth, preterm, again, it's a scary experience. So again, expect these emotions to come out, and be available to folks, right? To answer questions, to walk them through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I've heard some NICU families talk about kind of feeling like they're in survival mode in the NICU. And it wasn't until going home that they kind of fell apart, that the gravity and intensity of what they experienced kind of came crashing down. I know I've heard or read that that's particularly um, true for the non-birthing partner. Um, and I'm wondering, Aubrey, if what was the experience like for you and your husband once you did get home? Does that resonate with you or not
Yeah,
so much?
definitely. In the NICU, you kind of had a planned out day almost of like what was going to happen, like a routine, and
Mm-hmm.
like you started to realize what the expectations were and where you needed to be and all that stuff. And but then once you get home, you don't have that.
Right.
And the reality of the birth plus the experience, and we had another child who was just a toddler at the time as well too to take care of, as well too, just mixing it all together, I think hit my husband harder than it did for me, because he was being the brave while we were in the NICU, making sure that we were okay in the NICU, making sure that my son at our in-laws house was doing okay. Like he was just focused on what he could at the time. And then when we got home, I think the reality of it hit a lot harder, because he was able, first of all, to be able to relax a little bit more because we were home now, and just kind of process it from there.
Yeah.
I think
Chavis, can you
that first,
comment? Oh, sorry.
no,
No,
that's
go
okay.
ahead, Aubrey, please.
I said that first week was definitely a harder transition period than our other child, when we, were able to just bring him home and it's a typical newborn routine kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. Chavis, could you comment on that, on the experience of the non-birthing partner?
Yes, I agree. I agree. The discharge is very difficult for families, and certainly for the support person, it's very difficult. I believe that while folks are in the NICU, Aubrey, as you said, there's the support, there are the monitors, there's sort of the safety net of the healthcare team sort of right outside if something's going on. When you get home, there is probably maybe a nurse there that's helping, but again, it's all on you. And I would say while folks are in the NICU, here, as you said, they're in survival mode. That adrenaline is just pumping, right? They're just focused on what I need to do, what's going on with the baby, who do I need to speak with. And then, Aubrey, as you said, when you go home, sort of the adrenaline starts to drop, and then the emotions sort of start to bubble up. right?
Mhm.
And I would say for the care providers, and again, the literature does say that a post NICU, that's when it does hit the support person. I know I have conversations with the male support folks, and we talk about how society tells them they need to be the rock.
Mhm.
Big boys don't cry, suck it up, all these things, right?
Mhm.
It's about the birth parent, not them. But again,
Right.
have to realize that this is a traumatic experience for both people, and both people
Mhm.
need support. So I always talk about caring for yourself, but also caring for your partner in whatever way that you can, and
Mhm.
then enlisting the help of family and friends, and your community to support you. But again, also realizing that you need to find those folks who are providing support and not adding stress, because you might have
Right.
some really well-meaning family members or friends who want to do things, but they just cause more stress than not, asking
Mhm.
a lot of questions. And you just need to find folks who are just there to be supportive, to help with childcare, cut the grass, cook dinner, whatever you need, so that you can again start to process all that stuff that just happened.
Right. Yeah. You know, as as we're talking, we're having the exact same conversations that we have with any NICU family, no matter what the gestational age is, no matter what the medical complication is. And so I think it's just really important for those of us that are in, a supporting type of role or an advocacy role, just, to really work on dismantling that myth that a bigger baby means a less impactful experience, because it's just not true. Um, so as we close, we've got just a couple more minutes. Aubrey, is there anything that was particularly helpful for you, either while you were in the NICU or once you went home, that you want to make sure that those who are caring for families really know about?
Yes. So the first thing is be an advocate for yourself and for your child and for your support person. That could be your spouse or whoever's there with you. You need to first provide the words for your child. If you recognize something's wrong or if you feel like this would be better, please do not hesitate to say anything. They can't speak, and you are
Mhm.
going to know your child best, even if the medical team has been with them just as much as you have. That is your child. You know that it's that maternal and paternal instinct in you.
Mhm.
And be an advocate for yourself. If you need help, if you need assistance, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to reach out, and it's okay to feel those emotions,
Mhm.
because that is your experience, and there should be no shame or guilt in it, even though there's going to be times where you feel shame and guilt.
Mhm.
Um, and then make sure that you're providing the best care for your support person as well too, because
Mhm.
in those newborn days, whether they were in the NICU or not, it is, you need to be each other's teammate as well too during those times, because you guys are going to be working together to make sure that you're providing the best family unit for your child and for each other to continue to grow. And I would reach out to different resources. So I reached out to Project NICU. They are based out of Cleveland, Ohio. And I was able to connect with support groups and other people that went through similar situations, and was able to get those information packets, about the NICU
Mhm.
experience. So even though it was post NICU stay, it still helped to read that information about what I went through, because at that
Mm.
time, I didn't know what I went through, like
Right.
I
Right.
didn't have any, like, not too many people I knew had a NICU stay. So I
Mhm.
didn't really know what I went through.
Right.
And so that just kind of helped be able to alleviate some of those, I guess, concerns and worries,
Mhm.
and like, did I do something right, or did I do something wrong, or did I,
Right.
those kinds of questions as well too.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And Chavis, how can we best support families, particularly, families that have shorter NICU stays, or, how can we best support them beyond the NICU?
Yeah, and I would say, for providers, never underestimate the emotional impact of any birth,
Yeah.
until you hear from the birth parent and the family the impact that birth has had on them. Again, even just, we think about fertility and that sort of
Hmm.
part, how that plays a role in birth and the birth experience. Um, but again, I think, information is key. Relationships are key. As a psychologist, I believe we're social beings, and relationships are very
Hmm.
important. So create a support system for yourself, friends, family, play groups. Really, again, online now, there are, all sorts of resources in terms of connecting, not only locally, but, across the country, for folks
Right.
who you feel comfortable talking with, telling your story, getting support,
Mhm.
reading, watching videos, learn that you don't have to go through it by yourself.
Right.
Certainly reach out to your pediatrician, your healthcare providers for information and links. 0 to 3, they have information, for what to think about in terms of development. Um,
Hmm.
Again, Aubrey, as you said, find people that are going to say, yes, you're a good parent. You did a great job,
Right.
to really support you through this. Um, and again, there's always, also there's therapy. You can reach out to a therapist,
Mhm.
be it couples, individual, or group therapy. Again, it's always nice to be around folks who can say, yes, I walked in your shoes, or I understand what it's been like. But you did a great job. You weathered through it, and you're going to get through it.
Yeah, absolutely. That validation is
Yes.
really really healing. So, and Aubrey, I just want to say to you, you got through it. You did a great job, and you are continuing to do a great job. And we're just so thankful. We have some comments. Proud of you, Aubrey. Thank you for sharing your experience. Great information. So again, I just want to thank you both for being here, for sharing your time and your expertise and your experience with us today. And I want to thank everybody else for joining us as well, for this edition of NICUnity. We are intentional in our efforts to make participating in our offerings as easy as possible. So please just follow us on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, and you'll always know when we have another episode coming up. So thank you, Chavis. Thank you, Aubrey. And we will see everybody next time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.